Welcome to episode 24 of Knittings and Sewings, a podcast about knitting, spinning, sewing, weaving, crochet, and a wide variety of other fiber arts. Walter today, we're in really cold weather today, so Walter has on his snuggly Christmas sweater, his Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer sweater. You might pan over here and look at his sweater, Bob. It's really cute. Even though it's post-Christmas, this sweater looks good on him, so we've got it on him. We're having below zero temperature, so it's really very, very cold. And just in time, I finished my Ranunculus sweater in time for this bitter cold weather. I did knit it out of the Joe Sharp Aran Tweed yarn and the color Jewel. And I have, okay, Walter, I have almost a whole ball left, so I used a total of 800 yards to make this sweater, including the long sleeves. And now I'm going to stand up a minute, Walter, so I can show them how the sweater looks in the daylight. This is after blocking. I was pretty pleased with how it turned out. It has a little bit of ease, but not too much ease. So this is the amount of ease I had. And I think that it's comfy, but not too large and not too small, not too clingy, which is how I wanted to do it. It has a high neck. Has a little bit of tweed flex in the yarn, but it's not excessively tweedy. And now I'm going to tell you a little bit more about some of the details. So I wanted to go over some of the things that are specific that I did with this sweater that I think might be helpful to you. First of all, I want to point out that we're sitting in my craft room because I've moved or made a new little cozy area for me to do some crafting with a glider chair Bob found for me secondhand. I wanted to have a space in my craft room that I could actually sit and knit. And I'm still working on some of the details. I need to get a lamp here and need to add a few more little cozy touches. But basically, this will give me some space I was just using for storing my craft books. I can now use to sit cozily and knit or do my other crafts, crochet during the winter months. And I just think it'll be a good area to have. Do you have an area in your home where you like to craft? I think this will be a good area for me. Now back to the Ranunculus. I used a size 9 needle throughout most of this sweater, but I did go down to a size 7 on the sleeves, at the end of the sleeves, from about here down. And then also I used size 7 on the bottom part of the sweater, the ribbing at the bottom, so it wouldn't flip up. I first started by decreasing about 8 stitches around when I was getting near the ribbing, getting ready to do it. So I had decreased slightly, and then I did a size 7 needle doing the 2x2 ribbing. 2 knit, 2 purl is how I did my ribbing on the bottom. Same as with my sleeves. So for the top, I did a tubular cast on, which was a little bit different ribbing, but it was well worth doing it. I enjoyed doing it, and I used a size 16-inch Lantern Moon needle because I prefer a small needle like a 16-inch versus magic loop. For me, it seems to work better. So that's what I did. The other thing I want to mention about the bottom, the rib flipping thing, is sometimes you will get your rib flipping up when you go from stockinette to ribbing, or sometimes even when you go from garter stitch to ribbing, because the ribbing apparently, I don't know the exact explanation. I know that Patty Lyons talks about it, and she has a new book out, The Knitter's Bag of Tricks, and I plan on getting that book because I've heard good things about it. And I understand that she explains why that rib flipping happens in that book. So I'm going to be getting that in the very near future, and I'll let you know what I think about it. But it basically, this sweater is one of those, what I call Bisquick sweaters, because I had a home ec teacher in 7th grade talk about, and she recommended that we use Bisquick as a basis for a lot of our baking projects. And so, because you could take this generic batter and turn it into whatever batter you wanted, whether it was pancake or cakes or cookies. And so with this particular sweater formula, sweater pattern, it can adapt in a lot of ways to whatever kind of sweater you're wanting to make. And it can be looking quite different depending on the yarn you use or the options you use. Like you can either do a close fitting neck like I did, or you can choose a very loose shoulder fitting, more of a relaxed fit here at the neck. So it really depends on that. You can make a short or long sleeve version. There's just all kinds of varieties, and most people make this much more cropped than I did. I wanted it to be a little bit lower. I didn't want it cropped. I wanted it to fit sort of at my hips, just at the top of my hips, and so I did do that. Now, I'm short-waisted, so for me, I ended up making a total of my body of the sweater was 22 inches, but after blocking, it blocked down to 23 inches. So it did grow slightly, grew an inch. And so it just fits me right now perfectly, I feel like. But I did try this sweater on all along as I made the sweater. It's a top down. And so that allowed me from the very beginning here to try it on, because I have a unique, everybody has unique things about their own body type. But for me, I have very small, narrow shoulders, but yet I'm busty. So I had to keep trying it on to make sure that that yoke area was going to fit well and not be too sloppy, big on my shoulders, but yet accommodate my bust. So I chose a size 3. There are a total of 12 different sizes in this pattern. So you can adapt it. All of them have some ease built into them. But I chose number 3, which is supposed to be, you'll see it starts with 46 is the smallest, according to this, inches, which is the same as 117 centimeters. And it goes up, the pattern goes up to as big as 70 inches, which is a total of 180 centimeters. So this is a huge range of size. So it is very size inclusive, and I like that aspect of it, but I was glad I went with the third to the smallest, because I think if I'd gone any larger, it would have been too big for my liking. I like it to be like it is. So it turned out just right. But anyway, I do like the adaptability of the sweater. According to the pattern, it uses anywhere from 520 yards up to a total of 941 yards. And with me, what I found was I did use 8 whole balls. So that was about 800 yards. I barely dipped into this 9th ball. And generally, one thing you can tell is if you have, I had used a total, I had 3 balls left when I finished the body. So one thing I have heard is that, one rule of thumb is that your sleeves, if you do long sleeves, the 2 long sleeves will take up roughly 1/3 of your yardage. And that was true for me, although I had a little bit extra. So I'd say for me, it took 200 yards total to do the sleeves. And I ended up with almost this whole ball extra. So I would say I would allow, you know, it's not a high yardage sweater, but I would allow for a little variance because, like I said, for me, I used a total of about 830 yards maybe for the whole thing. The other thing I want to say is that if you are a new sweater knitter, this is a really nice, easy sweater, I would say. Easy pattern to follow, well written, and thousands of people have made it, so it's been well tested out. And so you may find it helpful, though. There's someone named Sundragon, who I'll put a link to her channel. She has done a whole series on knitting the ranunculus, and she begins by talking about how to pick the right size for you and the type of ease that you want. So if you are a newer sweater knitter particularly, I think it would be very helpful to take a look at her YouTubes to learn a little bit about what might be the right size. And of course, doing a gauge swatch is always helpful. Now I'm going to show you a brief excerpt that as I was knitting the sweater last week, I had finished one sleeve and was getting ready to start the second. I think it might be helpful to take a look at that because I talk in there about how I'm wanting to make the 2 sleeves match. and how I went about doing it. When you're doing a pickup from the sweater itself, it's helpful to have some lifelines. I'm always a big advocate of lifelines. So here we go. I'm putting in this excerpt now. This is the Ranunculus sweater in progress. By the time you see this, I will have hopefully completed it, but I wanted to show an excerpt while I have one sleeve completed, so I could explain some of the things I think might be helpful to you in making this sweater yourself, especially if you're doing the long sleeve version. There's been a lot of things, a lot of people have made these, thousands of people, thousands of projects, but in my own version of this, I decided to do the heavier weight yarn, which is the Joe Sharp Aran Silk Tweed yarn. And so this is the yarn. It's a little bit tweedy, not a lot. But I had this from my stash from years ago. I had 9 balls of it. And I wanted to use those up and hoped I would be able to make long sleeves because it is a winter weight type worsted yarn. So I did want to have sleeves, and I wasn't sure at first if I would have enough, but the body itself took 6 balls of yarn, and I made the 3rd size. So there were a whole wide range of sizes, but I made the 3rd size, and I used a size 9 needle for the body. Now, I used regular needles for the body itself, but when it came to the sleeve, I switched over to my favorite way of knitting sleeves and socks, which is the flexi flips. These are Addi flexi flips. They come in a variety of different brands. You can get them in, but basically you use 2 of the needles to hold each side of the sleeve or of a sock, and then the 3rd needle you knit with. So it's a good way on a very small circumference project to get your project done. And then what I did was I marked along here as I did the sleeve. Whoops, this isn't the sleeve page, but here we go. As I did the sleeve, I made tick marks like I often do. Some people use Knit Companion or other electronic ways of tracking their projects. Some people use Excel spreadsheets. But for me, it's the old-fashioned, take a photocopy of the actual pattern or print the pattern and make my tick marks along it as I go. And when it comes to doing the 2nd sleeve, which is missing right now, I have it on waste yarn right now, but when it comes to doing the 2nd sleeve, I will follow these same tick marks and be able to hopefully have a very similar sleeve on this side. And I make little dots under the tick marks as I do the 2nd sleeve or the 2nd sock, whatever the case may be. But I wanted to show you, so on this, like I said, the flexi flips come in a container like this. And because the body was done in 9, size 9, and the upper sleeve I did in size 9 needles also. But when I got down here to the lower part, I first did this sleeve earlier in the week and did the whole sleeve, and they didn't have quite as much tapering as this does. And so I didn't like it was too full at the cuff, and I didn't like the way it looked. So I decided to rip out from here on the cuff, to go down to a size 7. I'll show you. I didn't have a size 7 flexi flip, so I had to go to these other double pointed needles, the Zing. I happen to have Knitter's Pride Zing, size 7, because I wanted this section from here down to be tighter and to be more tapered. So that's where I switched to the 7 right here, and then did these rows, and then the last 1.5 inches I did the ribbing as well. So that brought in the sleeve like I like it. And I like the way this overall tapering is done and the way it looks. I'm leaving in these lifelines so that when I get to the next sleeve, this one I'm getting ready to do, I can measure as well as the row count that I have with the tick marks. And I can see how many inches each one was, so hopefully I can get a very similar result on the other side. So at my knitting group this afternoon, I will be picking up the sleeves, this sleeve, the stitches, and going along hopefully in a similar manner and ending up with a similar result. I will stand up and show you right now how the whole thing is working out size-wise, color-wise. This is called Jewel, the colorway Jewel, and it's kind of a purpley color. I'm also going to block the sweater when I'm finished, so I will wet block it. But right now,
this is how it looks in process. I do like the length I've got, and I'm really happy with this.
Well, I hope that was helpful in giving you some guidelines for doing your sweater sleeves to make them match. I wanted them to hit, just above my wrist. I didn't want them to be too long where they were getting into stuff as I wear it, but I ended up having a really nice size. It turned out well, but again, I anticipated it to need to be blocked and to gain a little bit, which it did. It gained about 1/2 inch on the sleeves and about 1 inch on the hem. So I'm very happy with this sweater. I wanted to show you how it looks completed, and let me know if you've ever knit the ranunculus or if you intend to in the near future. Let me know about your experience with the ranunculus.
Now that I have my wonderful Shacked Matchless back from Yarn Barn with a little tune-up, I'm going to use her name is Mabel, to spin some of this BFL fleece that I have been prepping. And what I do first, I prep right before I spin. So I'm using my little Forsyth mini combs, and I don't know if Mr. Forsyth still makes these or not. I'll try to provide a link in case he does. But basically I load the combs and then carefully, and you don't have to load them really heavy. If you load them lighter like this, you can actually go much faster. But what I'm doing is combing. This is the first round, like this. And what it's doing is getting rid of the vegetable matter. It's probably going on my floor, but that's okay. I like to do this outside during spring and summer. But since we're here right now wanting to do some prep, that's what we do. And then we just do this process back and forth 3 times is what I like to do to produce, from going from this rough fleece to producing a fluff like this, very fluffy. Even though I'm combing, which is a worsted prep normally, those of you that are spinners know what I'm talking about, but even though I'm combing it, I am using a woolen process to spin. And before I do that and start spinning, I want to show you, I keep my disposal bag right close at hand to put the discards from whatever is left as the combing process I put into here. I save this to later turn into dryer balls that you've seen me make before. So these are used, the refuse from it is still used. And I want to show you real quick, these are my grandmother's socks she made me many years ago, like 11 or 12 years ago, before she passed away. But they last really long if you make, she used a worsted prep on these socks, or excuse me, a worsted yarn. She did not spin this, she just knit. But I still have my Grammy socks, and I wear those when I want a snuggly day to spin. I use my hand knitted socks. Now I'm just going to show you the spinning process for this. You might want to come in close on this. What I'm doing, I'm making almost like a purposely bumpy on this particular yarn. I'm making it bumpy. You'll see it has these little bumps like that because it's going to be a 2-ply yarn. One of the yarns is going to be bumpy like this, and the other is going to be very smooth. And that's the planned, what I'm doing on this yarn. It's going to come out a worsted weight. But you notice I keep on the side, this is a finished plied yarn. It's very springy. And I keep this on the side of my wheel as an example so that I can make sure my yarn stays consistent from skein to skein. But this is the first ply, which will be the bumpy. That's the most fun for me. The second one will be more of a straight, even, smooth yarn for the second part of this yarn. And then I will ply them together. That's it for now.
Well, we've had some bitterly cold temperatures this week. Last week was unseasonably warm, and now we're back to real winter, in fact, below zero weather. So I took the chance to stay inside and spin a little bit and realized it's been a long time. I spun the very tail end of this bobbin that I've been spinning the last time, I think was in November. So I've kind of been out of practice for a while, and my spinning group meets once a month. But I've missed a couple of meetings due to unforeseen things happening. So I've been really out of the groove of spinning. And today I decided I needed to get back into spinning the white or cream colored BFL that I had been washing the fleece a few months ago and started spinning on it, and I just kind of lost my mojo. So today I decided I'm going to apply these two BFL bobbins that I previously spun, and I'm using my new EEW Dreaming Robots Lazy Cape. It has 3 different bobbin holders, and Bob put it together for me this morning really easily. We're really excited about the fact that it has different little, what do you call them, knobs for bobbin holder rods for holding different, not only their own bobbins like this, but also even my shacked bobbins will fit. The Ashford bobbins will fit. Any of the other vendors' bobbins he's accommodating with this new Lazy Cape. And I just can't believe how affordable Maurice at Dreaming Robots has made his designs. They are just, he's a genius. All I can say, because the affordability, which I, like many spinners, need the affordability. I couldn't have an e-wheel myself. I couldn't afford one if it weren't for his wonderful engineering. So just want to plug him a little bit and brag about his wonderful engineering. And anyway, so I'm starting to, right now, going to apply these two together. And I'm taking my shacked bobbins. I've got a little vest there. Got my shacked bobbins, and I'm applying these two. This is a 2-ply yarn. And just want to again talk about the fact that I love spinning, and I like spinning on a traditional wheel, which I have a shacked matchless. That's what I originally spun this yarn on. But I like doing the e-wheel a lot also, and I never thought I would like an e-wheel. I was always pro old mechanical wheels, and I still love my matchless and my grandmother's Ashford Traddy. But there's just something so easy about this e-wheel, and especially if anybody has any kind of issues with, you know, a lot of people have different issues with arthritis, all kinds of conditions that make it hard to use a traditional wheel and make it hard for them to, you know, the mobility issue and the comfort, ergonomic. So this is just something you can do very easily, your e-wheel. And I just wanted to recommend that this new Lazy Cape works beautifully. I'm really happy with it. And I'm going to hopefully get back to, I think this is my 6th skein I'm spinning of the BFL. I already have in mind the cardigan I want to make with it. And I think I need about 1,200 yards to make the cardigan. So I'm going to be working on that more and having more of a focus on that this winter. I'm still thinking about whether I want to dye this yarn or leave it in the natural creamy state. I love the springiness of the BFL. It's really just wonderful yarn that it produces. And again, Carolyn and I got very lucky in buying this whole fleece at a bargain for $20 for a huge bag of, we had 10 pounds. This particular Camilla was a 10-pound fleece before washing, and she ended up being about 5.5 pounds afterwards. So I got a lot of fiber out of this for quite a bargain, and I think it's really good quality. In terms of projects that I'm in the process of, now that I finished my Ranunculus, I'm trying to keep my next project going because I'm having some good luck this year so far getting things on and off the needles. And so I did want to show that I have gone back to an oldie but goodie sock project, the blue jean socks that I'd spoken with you about before. I have this one at the gusset stage, and I have the second one also at the ready to start the gusset. I have them on 2 different sets of needles. So I'm going to be going back to these. I just picked up for the gusset last night, and I'm going to be getting back to these because I would like to have a pair of blue jean socks to wear this winter since we're having such a rough winter. So I am getting back to these, and I'm also going to be getting back to figuring out which projects I want to pick up again and which ones I want to frog from last year.
Well, it's time for us to wrap up today's podcast. I wanted to mention just a couple of other things in my wrap up. First of all, to talk to you about the knitting group that I started last week. Carolyn and I met for the first time with our new knitting group, and I wanted to report back that it went very well. We've had extremely cold temperatures and really weird, funky weather here, like a lot of the country in January. And so it was a challenge. We didn't have a particularly bad weather day that day, but we did meet. A total of 5 people came. It was a day of a Chiefs game, so I think a lot of people wanted to get back to the Chiefs game. But we had 5 people. We all met and enjoyed one another's company. We met at a cozy coffee shop on the west side of town on the Kansas side. Kansas City is divided up, along the state line, Kansas and Missouri. So we met for the first time there in Kansas, and what our plan is to alternate every other week. Now this tomorrow's meeting is going to be the third Sunday afternoon is going to be on the east side where I live, and hopefully we'll have some of the same people come back to make the drive over to the east side. But I enjoyed the people, and I think there will be also some other people coming to this one on the east side. And so we'll have a nice mix, and hopefully this will work out well. One of my listeners, Nancy, mentioned that she's had a knitting group going since 2011, and she's really become close with the members of that group and really enjoys their company, and they've become really close friends beyond knitting. So knitting and crochet. So I hope that our group too will form a cohesive bond. I've been in other knitting and crochet groups before, but the pandemic really shut down a lot of, the people I was meeting up with before. So this will be a new start, and hopefully we'll really benefit from it, all of us, in the new connection we're making. If you have any, experience with a knitting group or crochet group, let me know. And let me know if you feel like getting out and meeting some people, or if perhaps the weather or the winter has made you want to kind of sequester in and get snuggly and just stay home and knit or crochet at home. I would understand. It's certainly understandable. I also want to mention that I am still reading the Betty Hechtman Crochet Mystery Series. So I have not yet finished that series, so I have nothing new on the reading front to talk about. But there are 2 podcasts that I would like to mention that you might want to watch as well. I've been watching Bobblehead Knits, who is a newer podcaster. She's somewhere out of Colorado. I'm not sure if it's Denver or where she's out of, but she is kind of an empty nester like myself, and she knits a lot of projects similar to what I do. She was doing the Penguono sweater a few months ago. She finished up a lovely Penguono Stephen West that I have been working on, but kind of have had languishing for about the last 6 months. So I'm thinking about getting that out again. I'm not sure if I'm going to try to get that out again this year, or if I don't like it, I'm not sure. Have to go back and reevaluate a lot of projects. Go through a lot of projects I started in 2023 and decide if I want to finish them or frog them. But I think you'll like Bobblehead Knits. She is very engaging, and she has, been going, like I said, around the same time I have. So I would like to introduce you to her. And the other person is Scarla. I'm not sure what part of the country she is in, or I think she's in the U.S., but I'm not sure exactly where. She's a young woman who is very busy and active, has a lot of energy and a lot of interest in multi-craftal items. So she is a knitter, crocheter, and spinner. And I know she's starting to process her first fleece, a Shetland, she was mentioning in one of her last podcasts. So she's very entertaining. She does a wide variety of things. She even was making candles in one of the New Year's podcasts she did. And she had a really spent the weekend, that weekend, making candles, and it was the New Year's weekend. She was having bad weather wherever she was, and she was knitting a whole baby blanket in a weekend. And it was really good because the blanket turned out great, and I really enjoyed tagging along with her and watching her create that blanket. So if you like podcasts, those are two that you might want to check out, and I'll put the links below. And so that's about it for this time. I am going to be next time starting a new sweater. Since I finished the Ranunculus successfully, I want to move on to another sweater project, and I've ordered the yarn for it. Hopefully it should be here, fingers crossed, in time next time for me to cast on and tell you about that new knit. In the meantime, love what you're making and wear what you make. Bye, everybody.